if we sort of put our hands in the air and say this is all we can use. Are there any questions right now?
Michael, thank you for that simple yet very profound statement. Students at South Plantation, can we run over this presentation by 10 minutes since we started 10 minutes late? So Mr. Martin, can we end the presentation at 12:40?
They actually get lunch, and right now they're supposed to be at lunch, so we're already cutting into their lunch 10 minutes, so
okay.
They're hungry. I wish we could, but I think we're going to lose them in about 5 minutes.
All right.
All right.
So.
Okay, so we're going to buzz through this really quickly so we can get down to, I'll go 5 minutes and then 5 minutes of questions and answers. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Grace. We'll skip this. Next slide. One of the issues that's a real problem, go back to the second house slide. This one. In any kind of buildings, but in a house it's very simple to understand, is infiltration of air. And down where you live and down where I live, we all understand that the air is very humid. The air has a lot of moisture in it in the form of vapor. Now, the other issue is that we turn on the air conditioners in the summer. Everybody knows that down in the south, the air conditioners are on full blast in the summertime. And sure, it feels great, and I won't lie, I should have turned it on when I need it. But one of the problems is if you have a leaky house, that moist air is coming into the house somewhere, and it's touching or coming up against a material that is being air conditioned. So that material is a lot cooler than that hot, humid air. So if you go to the next slide, you all understand the sort of basic principles of condensation. When you have a glass of water with ice in it, it gets condensation. It gets moisture on the outside of it, and that moisture comes from the air around the cold glass that is trying to get into the glass. So hot air or heat will move in one direction. Heat will move to where it's colder. And in sort of a process of trying to make everything the same temperature, the heat will move to the cold glass. The heat will move through the cold glass, but the water will not. And so the water forms condensation on the outside. Now, when that happens in a building, go to the next slide, we have a real problem. We have mold. And mold is one of the biggest problems, I think, in the building industry today, in part because lawyers like to sue people because of it, and in part because, and due to a larger part, I think, because we do not detail our buildings well, and we don't pay attention to how our buildings work with the mechanical systems, with the air outside, with moisture barriers, and all of that. Next. So this may not be easy for you to see, but I'm of I guess a small but growing group of people who believe that vapor barriers are not really important for anybody south of the American-Canadian border. Anybody up north in Canada, they probably need a vapor barrier, but we probably don't. And I think we spend a lot of time on vapor barriers trying to keep moisture out from outside from coming in. And we do a fairly decent job at that. But the real problem is not necessarily the moisture from the outside coming in. We already have moisture inside the house. Everybody takes showers. Everybody turns on their faucets. Everybody washes clothes. Everybody uses their dishwasher. All those things have water in them, right? And so we have to learn to understand how to make our buildings dry out better than keeping our buildings dry. Because buildings are out in the world, and they're going to get rained on, and they're going to get wet. So I think it's a much smarter thing to think about how we keep building, how we get buildings to dry out, rather than we keep them from getting wet in the first place. Because once they get wet, and we have materials that are supposed to keep them from getting wet, now we keep them from getting dry. And I think this is sort of a new sort of trend that we're starting to really understand. And all across the country, vapor barrier codes are being changed because of this philosophy. Next. We'll skip this. Next. We'll go through. We'll skip the pop quiz. Next. Next. Right there. So this is a. Go ahead into the next one. The flooring one. I'm sorry. Back up. One more. So this is an exercise that you can use with everything that you do to your building. And I've got 3 types of flooring, and there's definitely much more types of flooring that you can use. I've got pine flooring, I've got sheet vinyl flooring, and I got bamboo flooring. Pine is somewhat local. It's from the continent, at least, and much of it can be recycled or reused. So this pine right here is old growth pine. So it probably came out of another building and is being used in a newer building. So this wood is hundreds of years old and looks great. Sheet vinyl is, again, a chemical based product, petrochemical based product. It's extremely cheap, and it covers a lot of ground, and it's durable. And then there's bamboo flooring. Bamboo is a grass, so it's a renewable resource. It grows very fast. It's very strong, and it's pretty. It's a beautiful product. But it's made in Asia, and predominantly most of the bamboo flooring that we get in this country is made in China. And so some of the things that you want to think about is, what is this product made of that we're using? Where does it come from? What's its life cycle? What kind of chemicals is in it? What do they use to glue it? What do they use to make it? There's all kinds of questions that you begin to ask about the products that you want to use in the building, and then begin to sort of say, well, this is better than this, and this is better than this, and come to a kind of rational decision about the products that you're using. And it's not necessarily based on aesthetics. It's I think based on a much deeper ethic, and that's really important to begin to understand how to make the indoor air quality and the environmental health of the building much better.
Michael, if you don't mind, if we can pause the presentation here and go back to the students at South Plantation, the hungry students. So what are some of your takeaways from this video conference, and what are some questions that you have for Mr. Grote?
So, alright, you have all these problems with using vinyl and so forth, and the mold. So what materials are you using to glue things and making the plastics so they don't release harmful chemicals in the air? How are you combating the problems that are being caused by man-made materials?
Sure. The student house that we're building is addressing a lot of those issues. We're using pine flooring and very little plywood. We're using sort of OSB on the outside. That OSB does not contain any formaldehyde. But the flooring we're using is 2x6 tongue and groove pine. It makes the house stronger, and it is the flooring. And when we finish it, we're going to finish it with a wax. We're going to finish it with a Carnauba wax, the wax that surfers use on their surfboards. So it's a natural material. It doesn't off-gas. And we're attempting to use as many sort of very just natural products that we can use without a whole lot of chemical finishes like paints or stains and things like that. And when we do use those, we'll use low VOC paints, which means they sort of have very low amount of volatile organic compounds that make us sick also.
And Michael, you've spoken about the importance of environmental health, especially in the indoor space. It affects the air quality and just what happens to our bodies with asthma and such. So what can the students do right now to identify and change the air